Somewhere Over the Rainbow, originally just called Over the Rainbow, was written by Harold Arlen with lyrics by Yip Harburg and sung of course by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. It's a much-loved song with a highly regarded melody, but even so, I'm not sure everyone realises just how good it is. In this video I want to explain to you just how good it is. Now, it's not rare for people to say that the beauty of a thing lies in its simplicity, and in many cases I might well agree with that. But often, I think it only applies when it's understood in a certain way. Interpreted in other ways, it can actually imply things that I don't agree with. Saying that something's beautiful because it's simple can, for me, confuse cause and effect. Plus, there's an implication that it's down to choice, as if artists can either choose simplicity or choose complexity, and they'd do better to choose simplicity rather than trying to show off with complexity. What's missed here, in my view, is that simplicity is hard. Being cryptic, I might even say simplicity is complex. I don't believe that if more artists kept things more simple, they'd create more beautiful works more often. I don't think most artists have the talent. I don't think real inspiration strikes that often. The truth is that most simplicity feels boring. Very often in the arts, simple things don't offer that much. They don't provide anything different, they don't go anywhere. As a result, they don't tug at the heartstrings, they don't delve into the depths of human emotion. Simplicity is usually just dull, lifeless, cliched, and uninteresting. Instead, what I believe is that something really special has to be happening in order for something simple to manage to be powerful, be evocative, distinctive, memorable. When you do achieve that, simplicity and beauty tend to go hand in hand without one being the cause of the other. Being simple, your ideas can feel more beautiful, more pure, more perfect, uncluttered, as if the ideas flowed through you, fully formed, without you having to construct them manually. And if your ideas are really beautiful, then you won't have to add lots of frills to them. Your core ideas will be enough on their own, and you won't need to add more things on top. It's simplicity enabling beauty, and beauty allowing simplicity, which is more nuanced than saying something is beautiful because it's simple. Simplicity is no guarantee of beauty. Simplicity is often bland, and often complexity is necessary to produce beauty when real inspiration is hard to come by. Somewhere Over the Rainbow is simple, it's madly simple, but the complexity required to make that work is staggering. If you try to write a song like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, you'll probably end up writing something more complex, and worse, because you'd lack the skill to write something so simple that sounds that good. I've tried a couple of times and that's what happens. I'm going to show you the ways in which this song is so simple, and hopefully you'll realise why that simplicity is not so simple at all. Here's the main melody, the one you're all familiar with, that structurally I'd label as the A theme. Now, apart from the final note in green, the whole of this main melody is constructed out of just two ideas, just two. These sky blue phrases and these yellow-orange phrases. And just by ordering them in the right way and shifting the pitches while maintaining the same contours, Harold Arlen has managed to tell a story with his melody that develops, with each phrase logically progressing from the one before it. I know it can sound quite cheap to just claim a melody is telling a story without justification, so using an analogy, here's what I mean. If you're communicating with words, any kind of speaking or writing, you'd expect that each new sentence would be connected to what came before it, but would present new information that develops the ideas. And together, a group of sentences would form a paragraph, where the whole paragraph is making one unified point, even though it's constructed from separate sentences, each of which has the integrity to stand on its own. Weaker, cheaper melodies by worse writers can often start off with a line, potentially a very catchy musical idea, but then the writer can't think where to go next. So instead of developing their idea, they'll very often just go back to the start and repeat the same thing again. You don't get a full melodic paragraph. You just get a limited idea that doesn't go anywhere and just repeats, probably with some variation, but fairly predictable variation. For example, it's very common in melody to have a line of music and then a next line that copies the first line but with a different ending. And little more than that. You get some music, then a rewind back to the start, and then some variation on the end. Fine. Somewhere Over the Rainbow does something similar to that, but with a little more refinement. These repeated phrases, the 3 blue curves, the 3 orange ticks, are never exactly the same. The pitches change, the exact intervals between the notes change, and they don't just change randomly, but they change in a way that creates an overall arc to the melody from high to low. I'll explain that arc more in a bit. Nevertheless, these repeating phrases are recognisable because they follow the same general contour. The blue phrases leap up, then land on a ledge, leap, ledge. The orange phrases skip downwards, then climb back up, dip and climb. Psychologically, I think human beings pick up on these contours. Most of us don't have perfect pitch or a well-trained sense of relative pitch, yet pretty much all of us can pick up on similarities in bits of melody, even if all of the pitches have changed. Maybe our ears are even more attuned to contour than they are to pitches and intervals. So the careful modification of contours can allow repetition and variation to be happening at the same time. And that's what I call development. When both repetition and variation are happening constantly, then your melody is constantly developing in a way that feels connected rather than jumpy. Each sentence follows from the next, but each sentence is new. And also a theme that I notice with good music is that it holds together at different levels or scales of analysis. For example, this melody could be split into 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, where lines 1 and 3 are the most similar to each other, while 2 and 4 contrast with each other. But you could also feel it as 2 lines, where the first half has momentum towards this long end note, where there's a rest, and then the second half similarly has a momentum towards its long final note, which also rounds off the whole tune. I'll come back to this main theme, but now let's turn our attention to the secondary theme, the B theme.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me.
This employs the same strategy of simultaneous repetition and variation yielding a sense of development, but it does it in a different structure. In particular, this melody could be called a sentential period, or perhaps more intuitively, a period of sentences, or, in my preferred terminology, a period of paratact. In music, a sentence, or what I'm preferring to call a paratact, is a melodic structure where the phrases go A, B, where the B phrase is typically a longer phrase. The second A phrase doesn't have to be exactly the same as the first one, but it will follow the same general contour. So look at this top line. It follows this pattern because you've got this zigzag in red, that's the A phrase. Then that evolves into another zigzag phrase in pink, which we'd count as another A. Then you've got a completely different, longer phrase in purple, that's your B. So A, B, that's a sentence, or paratact. Also look at the bottom line, and now ignore the top line for a moment. We've also got an A, another A, and a B, so that's also a paratact. What that means is that we've got 2 lines, which are both paratacts, sentences, and they're clearly similar in contour, but also different. The first half of each line is where most of the similarity lies, and the second half of each line is where the lines really differ. Now, a period is a melodic structure that goes A, B, A, C, where the first half of each line, if you assume there are 2 lines, follows a similar contour, but the second half of each line is different. Now, taking this whole theme together, we can see that the first half of the top line is similar to the first half of the bottom line. Because again, the 2 A's in a period don't have to be identical, they just need to follow the same contour. Meanwhile, the second halves of the lines don't match, so we could label this A, B, A, C, a period. But remember, each line on its own is structured as a paratact, while taken together on a bigger scale they form a period. So this melody is building a period out of paratacts, i.e. a period of paratacts. And overall we could write this as A, B, A, C, or more precisely A prime, B, A double prime, C. So there's complexity there, but it's orderly. And there's a lot of repetition built into it, so it feels like a unit. It feels like any changes are connected to what we've heard before, which makes it feel simple. And look at it. Doesn't it look fairly easy on the eye? It is simple, but there's complexity that lies within the simplicity, without being noticeably complex, and yet it is simple. But despite this simplicity we're seeing, I will add a couple of factual observations about the melody as sung by Judy Garland, and how this contrasts with some other transcriptions you may see. Many simple transcriptions will notate the tune like this, but this isn't actually how Judy Garland sings it in The Wizard of Oz. Instead of singing standard eighth notes for these phrases, she actually sings in triplets. Now I prefer that. I think the triplets give the melody a more airy, floaty, dreamy quality, as opposed to the more regimented eighth notes from a standard 4/4 time. Secondly, the melody, as sung by Judy Garland, has these additional rests between lines, which just adds some nice variation to the repeated phrases. I must admit I'm not entirely sure if I've notated this final bit right. I'm not sure it captures the feel of how the phrase is sung, but I tried more complex options like a quintuplet or a sextuplet, and they didn't sound right. This is my best guess in the end because it fits the fact that there are multiple notes seemingly of the same length, and it fits how the word once aligns with beat 2, and the first syllable of lullaby aligns with beat 4, which you can hear is right if you compare the singing with the harp in the background. In addition to the pure abstract aesthetic of the melody, this melody does a lot of something that few other melodies do, and even those that do only tend to do it in moments, and that is reflecting the story told by the song in the contours of the melody itself. What do I mean? Well, these repeated leaps upward in the tune, and to a lesser extent these climbs, mimic Dorothy's yearning to fly up over the rainbow, away from the world, escaping her troubles in Kansas. But while she's longing for this, the descent in pitch over the course of the melody reveals the underlying, unacknowledged reality that she can't escape over the rainbow. The gravity of the real world will pull her back down to where she started. Because look, the final pitch here is the same as the starting pitch here, both in A flat, which is the root of the key. Though her singing takes us all the way up here, the inevitable result is to be left back where she is. And so there's a sorrow in the music. Despite the fantasizing about being somewhere happy, despite the major key that the song's written in. But, being in a major key, there is that natural pull to come back home to the tonic, which is innately satisfying. So maybe we shouldn't be so down on ending where we always knew we would, because after all, there's no place like home. The B theme includes some more links between the melody's contour and the meaning of the song, but I don't want to overdo the interpretation. I'll just pick out a few things. First, this long, drawn-out note at the start of the B theme, where Dorothy is singing "someday." In one sense, the languid delivery of the note may evoke something of the daydreaming nature of her thoughts at this moment. She's really getting into imagining being over the rainbow, as if it's a simple thing to do, to just wish upon a star, as and when she decides, and then she'll be somewhere with no troubles. But on the other hand, the length of the note implies how far away that dream is. We have to wait a long time for that day. In the second line, this second oscillating phrase is fractionally higher than in the first line as we move above the chimney tops, and introduces some more tension as it steps outside the home key and Dorothy's singing gets a bit more forceful, like she's having to fight for what she wants rather than just floating up to it. She insists that's where we will find her, and the strength of that assertion, combined with the growing strength of the melody at this point, may make us emotionally rally to her side, or it could give us grounds for skepticism. Now there are of course many other pieces of music that use the abstract features of the music to consciously reflect the emotions that the piece means to express, but the harmony and the dynamics may lead on that rather than the melody. A minor chord for a sad moment, a major chord for hope, softness for sensitivity, loudness for the highest drama, or any other possible variant of that. But it feels quite rare for a melody, the melody itself, to be so evocative of the emotional journey of a song, and I think this is remarkable. A quick note on the orchestral accompaniment, which is so tasteful, and again remains simple while incorporating some development and finesse touches. What I tend to notice in well-written pieces of music is that every part of the music, even just a supporting part, is doing something interesting, including something a bit melodic or rhythmic. The support won't just be providing the chords, it won't just be a harmonic background for the lead part to stand in front of. Each part will actually be offering something in its own right, but obviously all of the different parts will work together smoothly without creating clutter and without detracting from the lead part. This song is in 4/4, so 4 beats in a bar. The orchestra plays those beats, but what it does to make it interesting is just skip over one of those beats, the third beat. So instead of getting something completely monotonous, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, we actually get something that sounds like a rhythm. It's a very simple rhythm because the song needs to feel tender and delicate, but it's just enough rhythm to give a sense of forward momentum. And to make this very simple rhythm more interesting, the song makes use of its instrumentation. Those beats that do get played are shared across different instruments. That turns what could be a very repetitive 1-bar loop into a less repetitive 2-bar loop, which unfolds a little bit of a story. The first beats of each bar are typically voiced by a blend of strings and woodwind, and those notes are then held until the next chord change. Every first bar of the 2-bar loop features a harp, playing arpeggios on the 2nd and 4th beats. And the chords played are different, which brings in a touch of melody. Every second bar features what sounds to me like some kind of bell or chimes, potentially tubular bells, again on the 2nd and 4th beats. Overall we get something like bass, harp, harp, bass, bell, bell. The song has taken such a simple rhythm, and with a bit of good judgment, what I'd call poise, has produced some interesting, tasteful orchestration to support the main melody. Now that we've covered a lot of the low-level detail, let's zoom out and have a look at the overall structure. Here it is diagrammatically, where I've used the timings from the film version for setting the sizes of the sections. Because the song gets very rubato at times and contains multiple fermata, pauses, I found it quite hard to count the bars with any certainty, and I haven't found any definitive sheet music for the original film version, so that's why I did the sections based on timings. I would confidently say that the main melody is 8 bars long, and that for the whole song we've probably got less than 50 bars of music for a 2-minute song. Extraordinary. But I don't have to say much on the structure. Just look at it. A, B prime. Simple. The one point to make is about the last section, which I've labelled B prime. Of course, I've labelled it as B prime because it's fundamentally similar to the first B section, but with enough differences that it feels like a stretch to just say it's another B. This last section is clearly longer than the first B section, which is mainly because the song ends with a drawn-out line, slowing everything down, and then there's a final chord to finish the song. The other main difference is that the last section starts with an instrumental interlude, which maps on to what was the first line of the original B section. But that interlude does count as being part of this B prime section rather than being a section on its own. And you can tell that because the chords and the supporting woodwind lines are doing exactly what they were in the original B section. So the interlude is repeating the first line of the B section, just without the actual singing. That's it for the structure. That's the whole song. A, B prime. So simple, but again, it's simplicity that's earned. For so many musical ideas, it wouldn't be viable to use such a simple structure for the piece because it wouldn't feel like nearly enough. Because the musical ideas wouldn't have enough narrative to them on their own, wouldn't have the self-sufficiency to support themselves. So for more average ideas, a lot of additional work would have to be done structurally to turn those average ideas into a satisfying whole. Whereas the beauty of Somewhere Over the Rainbow is that the bedrock of the song, the theme A and the theme B, are so good that you can present them so straightforwardly with so few frills. It's hard to pull off that simplicity, but it works here. Granted, it also helps that this song's quite slow, so you can deliver a 2-minute song without much material. But again, slow music can be boring unless it's doing something right to constantly earn our attention, so this song still deserves all of the credit that I can give it. I would love to write a song as good as Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but I've yet to do it. To write viable music, I've always had to settle for things that are a bit more visibly complex on the surface. I don't have the mastery of my craft to write so simply, and it's easy to worry that I never will. So many things have to be going on at the same time for simple music to work, and that compositional fluency is beyond me. For now, maybe forever. But I'll keep trying, and I'll keep dreaming. Every artist is human, and genius is just a label for achievement. As a human, I can keep striving and keep searching for that which is simply beautiful. If Harold Arlen can do it.
Why then, oh why?